Oh, good evening, everyone. I'm Sailesh Padmanabhan. I'm your trainer for React. May I know who else have joined in? Mahender Reddy.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Mahender. So, can you tell me brief what is your background in technology? How did we arrive at React?
Actually, I have worked 1 year in .NET technology.
Okay. So you
Yeah,
have fair idea, working idea of how applications work.
yeah.
Okay. And I see Pranavi Reddy. Hi, Pranavi.
Hi Shailesh. I have 3 years of experience in UI.
Okay, fine. Uma Maheshwari.
I have no experience in UI. I recently started learning UI. I just complete HTML and CSS.
Okay, so you are aware of HTML and CSS.
Yeah.
And then we have Manohar.
Hey Shailesh,
Hi.
I don't have any UA experience, but I worked as a SQL database administrator before. I have
Mm-hmm.
like 4 years of experience as
Hmm.
SQL database admin in India.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. This is the experience. Whatever we have is good enough. See, technologies like React, they have been generated from uh, years of work over JavaScript. Right. So all these technologies are based over JavaScript. And what we had in JavaScript was totally client side. It used to execute on browser. Now they have built a framework over JavaScript that is very much workable in a non-browser environment. So let me give you a brief. Can you see my screen?
yes.
Yes, we can see your screen.
We'll come to architecture, but let me give you one brief. So we are aware of how web technologies work, right? So you can see my whiteboard, right? So reason because we are all starting on a blank slide, and I assume everyone is a beginner. So if we begin, what we have, see traditionally what we had with us, if we take a comparative view, traditional application development. If we talk of a traditional application development scenario, you have any environment. If you talk of any environment, say .NET environment, you had an architecture. Right, I'm just giving a rough diagram. You tell me wherever we lose connection or wherever we are not able to understand. We have a architecture at the base where we have some very core programming languages. Like let's assume if we work on .NET, we had something like C sharp, right? Hello.
Yes,
Yeah, so we had something like C sharp, based over which we had different other technology stacks, like we had server side scripting. If we understand the stack correctly, over this we used to have environment over which we can do server side scripting. So one of the server side scripting technologies was ASP.NET, and it is good technology. This has been further generated into ASP MVC. It's a great technology. And if you want to build applications that are seamless, expandable, right, and they are robust nature. So ASP.ASP MVC is a great technology, great tool. over this we have our server side scripting and everything. But what was the problem? Problem was, if we have to now, it's not just that we created our logics is fine, we also have to generate something called as view or pages that the user will interact with, and these views were tightly bound with the application. These views are tightly, that is, you have to build these views along with your application environment. Right, and that they are tightly attached with your application. That was one problem scenario. Other than that, if you want to add dynamic elements, all those dynamic elements will have to adhere to programming syntax and semantics that are in view with whatever programming technology. If we are using a .NET framework, whatever view we are generating, it has to be in accordance with that .NET framework. If we are using any other technology like Java, then I have to use those technologies that are in accordance with Java, like Servlet or JSP. So view was tightly attached with the, you say, middleware. This is in general, in very layman language, this is known as middleware, right? So one issue with this was, if I want to scale the application, if I want to scale the UI, in some way this middleware will be affected. Scaling won't be easy, right? Do we understand this? Hello,
Yeah.
is this, yeah? So this is a problem scenario. Now what over the years people in industry has developed, let me show the new scenario what over the years industry has got into, so that we can arrive at why do we read React. That they say that you certainly have a database, that is not an issue, where your final data will get terminated, right? That happens in traditional application as well, right? So you have a database, right? And different from database, you will have a middle layer that is going to interact with the database. Now, one of the popular way of developing this middleware is REST API. That is mostly what we call in JSON terms, the data that is produced is JSON format, JavaScript object notation. So as you study front-end development, you will have to keep an eye on this JSON technology. So we will study this along with front-end. So this data or backend is generated and it is in a way detached with the database to some extent, right? This is developed in such a way that it can be little less attached to the database. So this REST API, and then there is the view part. There is the view part that is further detached from the backend. Detached in a sense that for the view, what we need to show the data that is there in the application, and we need to capture the data and send it to the application. So this whole architecture is in a way is called as distributed, means it can exist on multiple servers. You can call it distributed, disconnected, and detached. Detached, why I am calling it detached? In a way that you can develop your front end totally independent of back end. Whatever is there in back end, it should not affect your front end design, or it should not affect the decisions that you want to take on front end. So it's sort of detached, or what we can also call it as loosely coupled. You can also call it as a loosely coupled application. Loosely coupled application. So one of the popular framework to build a loosely coupled view from an application is React. One of the framework. There are many other framework available. One of the framework to build a view detached from the backend is a React application. Right. So this React application, that is totally based over JavaScript and works in a Node.js environment. So are we aware of what is Node.js? Hello. Have you heard of Node.js?
I don't have any idea about
Uh,
Node.js.
see. what happened traditionally when we used JavaScript, we used to create scripts and attach it to our HTML pages. So those HTML pages were executable over the browser. Right. Now we can work in an environment that does not require a browser. That is, in a non-browser environment, we can build application. However, the web application obviously will have to execute over our browser only. So Node.js provides us with complete environment over which we can build our application. So this JavaScript we execute over Node.js. Over this JavaScript, we have our React application. Yeah. Is this clear? Are there any queries over this, what we have discussed? Hello? Is this clear?
It is clear.
Okay. So this whole stack, this technology stack, what do we call this? We have Node.js. Along with Node.js, there are libraries in Node.js to create a backend itself. I mean, this backend, this can be created over Node.js. So we use certain libraries called as Express, and then we use React to build that front end part. So and the database part, mostly we like to use mostly in traditional application development we use relational database. If we want JSON kind of documents to be saved, we can use a MongoDB, also Mongo database, and we are using an Express library, right? That is built over Node.js, again that is used to create a backend, and the UI will be created in React, and this whole environment works over Node. So this is known as MERN stack. This is actually known as MERN stack. Is this clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the stack. Stack means the technology, complete technology we are going to use. So this is known as MERN stack. So out of this MERN stack, what we preferably discussing, we are discussing React application. Objective of React based application is to generate front end or user interface or the view part of your application. Right. And how does this view part or the front end part interacts with the rest of the application? The data has to be interchanged in the JSON format. It is preferable to exchange data in JSON format. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So what happens in this JSON format? Data is transferred into a certain format. For example, I want to send some request, right? So in traditional terms, the request travels in HTTP through get and post, through get method or through post method in the request body. And if you are using something called JSON, the request travel in a certain format. So this looks like somewhat like a dictionary kind of thing where let's assume I am sending name, say Peter, right, and address, say 23 Old Baker Street. So this somewhat looks like a key value pair. This looks like a key value pair, right? Keys are these fields, unique fields, and then there are values. So this structure is known as JSON. So data is exchanged in the JSON format in this stack. Is this clear? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So this MERN stack we are talking about. Now let's focus more on the view part because that's what we have to study. Let's focus on the view part. Now, if we purely talk of React, as I told you, React is used to generate view, the front end part. And the whole architecture of React, it is component based. Can you see this diagram? Is this diagram clearly visible?
Yeah.
Okay. So the whole React application is component based. We build components that interact with each other, right? And if we talk of the store and reducers, when you have completed the basic part, basic understanding in React, we'll discuss that data within the application can be exchanged as a single state store. This is in JSON format. So this makes your application very much dynamic in nature. Right, this makes application very much dynamic in nature. If you just focus on this part, the complete React is divided into different components, and each component interact with each other. So since we have to only focus on the UI part, and in general, how is the UI written or how is the UI created, we have to involve HTML as well as JavaScript. So if you talk of what is involved in creating a React application, first thing we have to be sure what is involved in creating a React application. Our HTML tags. There are HTML tags involved, right? What we have to send to the browser, HTML tags. What is interpreted, what is finally generated as a client side, those are HTML tags, right? And inside the React, how do we write? There is a specific syntax or there is a specific way of writing things, right? So the specific way of writing things, this is known as an expression or what we call as JSX, JavaScript and XML. If I write it as JavaScript and XML, so entire UI has to follow this JavaScript and XML expression. JavaScript and XML expression. Now your browser cannot interpret this as JSX. So we require a transpiler kind of thing. Wait, I will write this again. So we require an in-between transpiler kind of thing that will convert the entire thing. So that is a Babel transpiler. That will convert the entire JavaScript and XML or JSX into a format that is readable by the browser. Right. So this goes to the finally this goes to your browser, right? And then that is interpreted, whatever contents you have created, whatever forms you have created, those are available to the user once this is converted by Babel transpiler. So this is the process. Now in this we don't have to do any compilation. We don't have to do any compilation command or anything. We just have to create our components. Can you see this Visual Studio Code? Hello. Can you see Visual Studio Code?
Yes, yes, we are able to see.
Yeah. So see in this Visual Studio Code, if you see, look at this part. This is all tags. It's all tags. And suppose if I want to just simply show some message. Right. So I just save and the entire React environment will do rest of the thing, that it will compile everything. Babel will do the transpiler thing, convert it into proper format and send it to the browser. So let me show this on browser. See, this is automatically interpreted on browser. So whatever tags, HTML tags I have studied and other HTML tags, there is a certain way of writing this. This is all a JavaScript function, right? All I have to do is write proper functions. This is the format, one of the ways of creating a component. This is a functional component. We'll discuss this in detail. I just gave one example. This is a functional component. Another way to create a component is through class. So we will see that when we dig deeper into React application, right? So we have to create such components that return UI, user interface, and that is converted by Babel, transpiled by Babel and sent to the browser. So finally we are able to see only the part that is required by the user. Only this part is, or whatever is inside the tags is converted and sent. So it's just one single text. There can be other things as well, like you can create text fields, you can create buttons and all sort of things. So for example, I have created my own component. This is my own component. So if I want to use this in my application, simplest way is I have to call it as a HTML tag. Right. So this component I have first have to call it as HTML tag, and this will be available. Do we understand this? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the first start for React. So do we understand how this whole React environment will work? We just have to use the tags in JSX format, and this will be compiled and sent to the browser. Right. So now the big question is, how are all these things coming together, and what are the things that I need to do, need to know before React? Little bit of awareness I need to have before the React. Little bit of things I need to know before starting out with React, because React is based over a stack, right? What we call as MERN stack, right? So over this stack there is Node.js. Over this stack, at the root of the stack, there is Node.js. So since we have to work out React in a node-based environment, so we have to know at least little bit of Node.js, how Node.js works, how we will write JavaScript-based programs in Node.js and execute them. What is the architecture of Node.js? Node.js has been built to run asynchronous applications. So do we understand the meaning of asynchronous? What is asynchronous application? What is an asynchronous application? Can anyone tell me? Asynchronous application? Anyone can. What do we mean by asynchronous? Manohar?
Yes.
So we understand what is an asynchronous process?
Like it will not take any acknowledgement from the client. Like if you are giving any command or something, like if any commit statement is done on one particular thing, it will not take any acknowledgement from the secondary thing. It is
That's
in
not.
uh,
See, if any application environment is not sending acknowledgement, then that is a
no, no, no,
recipe
I'm
for.
talking in SQL, and we have also like one thing like
Oh,
asynchronous and
okay.
synchronous. Yeah.
Oh, anybody else? Pranavi? Do we understand what is an asynchronous process?
Yeah, it's like all the functions working independently of each other, which is like
Mm,
non-blocking execution of
yes, non-blocking. Exactly. So what happens in synchronous? Until one function or one task is completed, we cannot move to the next task. Whereas in asynchronous, things can happen parallelly. So non-DS is totally asynchronous and non-blocking. So if there is a heavy task, it is offloaded to a thread pool. Right. So in this Node.js environment, we need to understand asynchronous operation. So based over this stack, one thing we need to understand, how are different operations, uh, asynchronous operations. So how will asynchronous operations work in the Node.js environment? And over this stack, there are different libraries available. See, when you are building application, any technology stack you pick up, you don't have to write anything from the scratch. And if you don't want to actually write anything from the scratch, you need to know all the modules. inbuilt modules in Node.js that are already available that we can use. For example, if I want to send a request to my backend and get a response data, so what are the inbuilt modules available, or what are the libraries that are already available and I can install? So both those things, at least a little bit of knowledge we should have. So based over this stack, we can then build on our different React applications. Right. So if we this part, if we have at least a little understanding how this part works, React will be easy for us. Otherwise, for every requirement, we'll have to write from the scratch. Right. So React.js works in tandem with this environment. The application, the UI itself allows for asynchronous operations. Do we understand this? Hello.
Yes.
Right. So little bit of Node.js knowledge of Node.js will help us. Right. So this React.js, what are the benefits if we go into working over React.js, or if I build my applications over React.js, what are the benefits that I am going to get? Right. First and foremost, asynchronous applications I am going to build. This is one benefit, that because I am building it over Node.js application, right? One another benefit, scalability. So generally, traditionally, we used to talk, whenever we used to talk about scalability, we used to talk it in terms of our backend or middleware. Now the front end, it should also be scalable enough. It should also be it should also be flexible. If I want to update, if I want to enhance my application, should be scalable enough. So there are a huge set of libraries available. Right, there is a seamless availability of different UI components. You can use different libraries. You can use Bootstrap or Material UI. Whole lot of libraries are available to build over React applications. Right, so these are some of the benefits we have in React.js. One another benefit is built over JavaScript. So since this whole framework is built over JavaScript, so when we are using React.js, we don't have to install any other application. We should be install Node.js. Besides this, we don't have to install any other application, since JavaScript support for JavaScript is universal. Right. So we don't have to install any other software except for Node.js. So this thing is built over JavaScript, so a lot of support is already available. This is one another benefit. And interaction with JSON. Right. So one of the benefits is you can interact through, or you can interact with JSON, JavaScript object notation. So these are some of the benefits we have with React.js. Is this clear? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. So these are the some of the benefits. So you can kickstart React.js as soon as you have your Node.js environment installed. One simple command and you will have a boilerplate. One another benefit is boilerplate. Boilerplate and templates. So whole lot of templates are available, right, to kickstart your React application development. This is another benefit. Right. Any queries up till here? Any queries? We understand the objective of React. Understand the purpose why we have to work over React?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Krishna, can we stop here? Hello. Krishna, are you there? Kishore? Okay, Kishore is not there. No problem. See, this was a brief introduction of React. Let me tell you what we are going to cover in React. First thing we have to see for working in React. See, we see how the React works. So first thing we have to see is creating components. So how we can create different components as I have shown you the diagram. This is totally component based. So how these components have to be created? There are two ways to create a component. We can use a approach where we create functions, JavaScript functions, or we can use an approach where we create a class. Right. Both have different implementations and both have different implications over your UI, how your UI behaves, right? Because it is related to, it goes down till how you manage the data through your components. So when we see creating components, we also have to see state management, how data is managed, how data is managed. So these are the topics we will see further, how data is managed inside your components and how components interact with each other, how these components interact with each other. So this is one another topic. So once we understand how different components are created, there is a concept of, if we are creating class based components, what is the life cycle of these components. So we have to understand what phases, under what phases does your component move through. So what is the life cycle of components, how the component is loaded, how it is destroyed, what are the different life cycle stages of this component, sending and receiving data from backend. I'm telling this in layman terms. So if you want to interact with the backend, once you have your structure ready, you want to interact with the backend, what are the different tools available? What are the tools and options available? Right. So one of the libraries available in Node.js is Fetch itself. It's an inbuilt library. There are other library tools like AxiOS that you can use to send and receive data from the backend. Right. And one major part that we have to interact with is Redux store. So this idea of Redux store, if I give you a brief, this is about how your application can have a common state. If you talk of Redux, how your application can have a common state and how this state can be shared between component. Instead of creating a state management for each component, you can have a common state for all the components. If we get a common state for all a component, what is the benefit of this? See, I had shown you one of the example. If I am adding something, if I am making a change in the application, that change is immediately visible. That change is immediately visible. Means components are able to interact with each other. This is possible only if we create a common store and that common store is available for all the components. So that is possible through Redux store. So these are major 5 topics. And then there are internally subtopics in them. Right, can you see my screen? Hello.
Yes.
Yes. So there are subtopics available, like how components will interact, what are higher order components, Then how we can use concepts like lazy loading, what are hooks, how can we create our own hooks, how can we use material UI. There are two ways you can further enhance your application. You can use Bootstrap, or you can create a custom CSS, or you can use a material UI, right? And then there is Redux that I have just now discussed. So once you are through with React, there is another thing. Can you see this Next.js? So this Next.js is a layer over React. It's a layer over React. It's just not enough that you study React. You have to read another layer over React. That is the Next.js. Right. So there is a huge difference between React and Next.js. It's a concept of server-side component and client-side component. Right. Any queries up till here? Hello.
No.
So this was uh, the starter for React. Right. You'll have to start with at least a minimum knowledge of Node.js to start off with React. Minimum, at least how the Node.js environment works. You can move through React. Acha. Besides this, are we aware of HTML and CSS? HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? You have working knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Hello. Have we worked over HTML? Some basic knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript?
Yes. Can you also explain us few advanced JavaScript concepts like
Advanced JavaScript concepts like ES6 you want to see?
yeah,
Creating ES6, creating class components, and there are some other concepts like currying. How will we use currying? How will we use functions like reduce, map, filter?
yeah, and object destruction,
Yeah,
destructing object.
objects constructing and destructing. Yeah, we can do that. Object destructuring, then spread operator, rest operator. Those things we can see with JavaScript. ES6 version we can see completely, because this whole React application, React framework, you have to follow ES6 pattern.
Okay.
Right. You have
Yes.
to follow ES6 pattern for this. The earlier editions, the earlier part JavaScript used to be pre-ES6. We didn't had so many features. Now with ES6, there are a whole lot of operators and whole other kind of concepts. So those you have to know before working over React. Right. Any other requirement? Has this schedule been shared with you? Content shared with you? They shared contents with you?
No.
No, no.
Okay, I will ask them to share the complete contents. Right. Ask them to share complete contents. Any other queries? Because this was the first session. So are we able to understand the objective of React? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So the whole purpose of React, see, when you are working on a framework like React, one thing you need to forget is how the backend is going to work. Right. What you are interacting with the backend is sending a sort of data, that is the JSON data. You only have to think about how you are going to consume that data. You have to think about how you are going to consume that data into your front end. Just how the backend is working should not be a worry for UI developer who is working over React. It's totally a detached environment and loosely coupled application environment. Right. So what I will do, I will stop here. Right.